Alibaba just called Qwen 3.8 Max the second most powerful AI model available today, second to only Fable 5. That's a huge claim for a model with 2.4 trillion parameters. But try finding the benchmark that proves it. Right now, you can't. Alibaba hasn't published the benchmark names, scores, prompts, or testing method behind the ranking. So where does Qwen actually sit against Fable 5, Kimi K3, and the other leading frontier models? I went looking for every comparison I could find, and the results tell a much more complicated story than Alibaba's launch post. By the end of this video, you'll have 3 questions you can use to judge any model launch before putting it inside an automation. Let's start with what Alibaba actually released. Qwen 3.8 Max preview is available through Alibaba's token plan, Coda and Coda Work. Alibaba says its 2.4 trillion parameter multimodal model is built for coding, data analysis, office work, and longer tasks involving tools. It also says the model will become open weight soon. But as of July 21st, the weights, license, model card, and technical report haven't been published. Alibaba hasn't disclosed how many of those 2.4 trillion parameters are active for each token either. It's important because the total parameter count doesn't tell you how much compute the model actually uses for each response. Now let's look at the benchmark claim. Alibaba describes Qwen 3.8 Max as comparable with leading frontier models and second to only Fable 5, but it hasn't published the list of models it compared. It hasn't named the evaluations used to create the ranking, and it hasn't provided the scores that separate Qwen from Fable. So now we don't know whether the second only refers to coding, reasoning, professional work, or one combined internal score, or something else entirely. That's not a benchmark result you can check. It's Alibaba's summary of testing we haven't been shown. Fable 5, on the other hand, has already been tested by artificial analysis. At maximum reasoning effort with its Opus 4.8 fallback, it scores 60 on the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index. That index combines reasoning, knowledge, mathematics, and coding evaluations. Artificial analysis also measured Fable producing around 68 tokens per second, but it recorded more than 111 seconds before the first answer token under that maximum effort configuration. So even one of the strongest models on the leaderboard comes with a real trade-off. It's intelligent, but that version is expensive and slow to begin responding. Qwen 3.8 Max doesn't have an artificial analysis score yet. It isn't listed on LM Arena either. That means there's no established independent leaderboard currently supporting Alibaba's overall ranking. But there is one smaller comparison that gives us something more useful. An independent tester ran Qwen 3.8 Max preview and Moonshot's Kimi K3 through the same software architecture tasks. Both models inspected the same 289 files and were asked to recommend how 2 connected codebases should divide responsibility. The results were close, but Kimi finished 3 points ahead after blind review. It completed the task faster, used fewer tokens, and handled lifecycle changes more completely. Qwen made fewer tool calls and produced a stronger description of the boundary between the 2 systems, but neither model invented file paths or code symbols. Both produce 7 groups of claims that need factual correction, and the last result matters more than the 3-point gap. Both models could inspect hundreds of files, cite real code, and still reach conclusions that went further than the evidence supported. It was also 1 task and 1 run per model. Now, this doesn't really prove that Kimi is better than Qwen across coding, automation, or general reasoning. But it does show why Alibaba's overall second-only label isn't enough. Different models can win different parts of the same job, and the model with the stronger architectural explanation might still be slower and consume more tokens. That's where the cost comparison becomes messy. Kimi K3 has conventional API pricing of $3 per million fresh input tokens and $15 per million output tokens. Fable 5 costs $10 per million input tokens and $50 per million output tokens. Now, Qwen 3.8 Max doesn't yet have an ordinary published per million token price from Alibaba. Access currently runs through token plan subscriptions and credits. Those credits depend on token usage, caching, reasoning, and tool calls. So you can't take the subscription price directly and compare it with the API rates for Kimi or Fable. You need to run the same task and measure what each completed result cost. The word open needs the same caution. Kimi K3 is already available through Moonshot's API, Kimi's products, and other providers. Moonshot has already announced the date for the release of its full weights. Alibaba says Qwen 3.8 will become open weight soon, but hasn't confirmed whether the exact 2.4 trillion parameter max checkpoint will be released, when it will arrive, or which license it will use. Even if the full model is released, running something this large would require serious infrastructure. And open weight doesn't mean you'll be loading right on your laptop. So what should you do with Alibaba's claim? Ask 3 questions. First, compare under what conditions. You need the benchmark names, model versions, prompts, token budgets, and reasoning settings. Second, what does one completed task cost? Include the tokens, response times, retries, and any human review needed to correct the answer. Third, can you actually deploy it? Check API availability, rate limits, weight access, licensing, and where your data is processed. Run those questions on Qwen 3.8 Max today, and the honest answers are simple. It could be one of the strongest models available. The small amount of independent testing shows real strength in tool use and understanding complex software systems, but there isn't enough public evidence to place it second overall behind Fable 5, not just yet. But remember to test it against one real workflow before moving anything into production. If you build with AI models and automation tools regularly, please don't forget to subscribe. Every new model launch gets the same treatment here, and I'll go through it one at a time. I'll see you in the next one.